Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Monique and I want to give a big thank you to all my amazing subscribers. If you are new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. In today's tutorials, we'll be creating a stunning Ankara Bustier dress with a double keyhole design and a ruffle basque effect. So let's get into it. I'll be using a 2 yards of Ankara fabric for these tutorials and a 4 yards of chiffon. To save time, I've already drafted the basic bodice. If you have been following my tutorials, you will know I always start with a basic bodice before making any dress. So I decided to skip that step in these tutorials. Here is what it looks like. I only added 1 inch for that intake and didn't include seam allowance. In my future tutorials, I'll do my best to create a more modern and trendy basic bodice for you. But for now, let's get into these tutorials. I took the shoulder to chest line, which is 8 inches, shoulder to bust 11, shoulder to under bust 14, shoulder to waist 17, shoulder to hip 25, and I added extra 4 inches for the style we'll be making for this dress. Then I'm also gonna have to draft the back panel. So I'll go ahead and just label it out. This is the chest line, bust line, under bust, waist, hip, and full length. Now, like I said, I have added 1 inch for that intake. I did not include seam allowance. I'll be adding seam allowance later on the dress. Now I'll be taking the bust span measurement. The bust is 8 divided by 2. It will give me 4. So I'm placing it on the bust line, waistline, to the hip line, and I'll go ahead and take a straight line. Then I'll come down by 1 inch from the bust point. Then from this side, from the waistline, I'm going to take ½ inch on both sides for the dart. Then on the hip line, I'll come up by 2 inches. After doing that, I'll just go ahead and connect the waist to the hip line like so. I'm creating the dart line. So I'm doing the same thing on the bust point. Remember, I came down by 1 inch. Now after doing this, I'll repeat it on the back panel, exactly what I did on the front panel. I took 3.5 inches for the neck width. Now I'm going to take the midpoint of the shoulder, so I'm going to mark it. I have around 2.75, so I'm going to connect it all the way to the bust line. After doing this, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create the style on the dress. So from the hip line, I'm going to slant it all the way to this point here. That's to the center front. That's on the hemline like so. So I created like slanted line. Now on the waistline, I'll separate the top part from the lower part. So this is the lower part. Now on the back panel, like I said, I traced exactly what I have on the front to cut out the back. I made a little mistake on this part. So this is the chest line. I'll come down by 2 inches. Then I'll take the bust span. The bust span is 8 inches divided by 2 to give me 4 inches. I'm placing it on the waistline, the chest line, and on the hip line. I'll come up by 2 inches. Then I'll place the bust span and take a straight line. So I'll take ½ inch on both sides and create my dart. This is me repeating the same thing I did on the front panel. So this is the lower part of the front panel. I'm going to use it to trace out the back panel for our style on the lower part. So I'll just go ahead and trim it out. So this is the back panel. So but before that, lest I forgot, I'm supposed to tighten the back to avoid zip bulge. I took 1 inch for zipper allowance. Like this straight line is for the zipper allowance. So I'll come in by ½ inch from this 1 inch zipper allowance, and I'll slant it all the way to the neckline. Then I'll repeat the same thing on the lower part. I'm going to slant it also all the way to the hip line. Then I'm going to cut this part out. We don't need this part. So we are doing this to avoid zip bulge so that the dress will look nice. So I'm cutting out the excess. So on the neckline, I I came down by 1.5 inches for the neck depth. So I'll go ahead and cut it out. Remember, we used 3.5 inches for the neck width. So this is the back panel. Our back panel is ready. So now I'm coming back to the front panel and I'll take the neckline. So I'm using 9.5 inches for the neckline. That's the neck. It's like a V neck. I'll still come down a little on the neckline, but before then I'll just create the style for our yoke. I made a little curve on the chest line to have this. Then I'm going to take 1/2 inch on each side to tighten the over bust. So this is the over bust. This curve is the over bust. So I'm going to connect it to the bust line to tighten this part to avoid gaping. So we have this. Now the next thing I'm going to do on the side, I'm going to take the dart. I'm going to take a dart rather on the side. I'm coming down by 1 inch and I'll connect it to the bust point. So the reason I'm taking this 1 inch is because the back panel is 16 inches and the front panel is 17 inches. So the difference between the back and the front is 1 inch. So when I place them together, you will notice that the back panel is a little bit shorter than the front, as you can see. So it's 1 inch shorter than the front panel. So this 1 inch I took is the difference between the back and the front. By the time I close the dart, it will tally with the back panel. So now I'll be creating the bustier. That is I'm going to create the cup for our dress. So on the underbust, I'm going to take the underbust circumference. So for me, my underbust is 31 divided by 4 will give me 7.75. so I have excess of 1.5 inches. So I'm going to share it on each side. So on this side, I'm going to use 3/4 inches, that is 0.75 here, and this side I'm going to mark 1/2 inch. That will give me 1.5. I hope you understand. So I'll connect it to the bust point like this. Then I'm going to take it all the way to the dart leg on the waistline. So after doing that, I'm going to use my armhole curve to create the cup, that is to give it a nice curve shape. So I have this. So I'm just trying to trace it out. So having done that, on the over bust line here, I'm going to come up by 1 inch for our keyhole style. So I'll just trace it out from the neck point here like this. So I'm trying to get the exact mark. So I'll curve it. I'm tracing it like it is on the over bust line. So I'm just trying to get the exact curve so that it will look the same. So I'll be eliminating this part out. So I'll go ahead and cut out the neckline and separate the yoke from the main body. So I've eliminated the excess here. So when we place it, we'll have something like this, as you can see. So this is the style on the neckline. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and cut it out. So I'll keep the yoke aside and I'm going to trace this part out. I'll start off by opening this over bust line on the dart, that is this dart line. I'm going to close the side dart to tighten this point here. So I've closed it and I've transferred the 1 inch dart to the chest line or to the over bust line. So I'll go ahead and cut it out and remove out the excess I don't need. So we have this. So this is the center front and this is the side. So this is the yoke. So I'll be using one for it. I'll just use one. I'll be using one on each side. So this is our back panel. So our panel is ready. So this is the lower part. I'll be placing it on the fabric to cut it out. So let's do that. So I've gone ahead to place it on the lining. So this is the lining of the dress. So the lining is on a fold. So this is the center front. Like I said, is on a fold. So I added 1/2 inch all round on the top part, on the side, and on the lower part. And on the side panel, I did the same thing. I added 1.5 inches on the side seam for seam allowance. Then on the yoke, I added 1/2 inch on the lower part. So that's the only part I added seam allowance. Then on the back panel, I added 2 inches for seam allowance, unlike the front panel that I added 1.5. The reason why I added 2 inches because of the 1/2 inch we removed on this part to tighten the back to avoid zip bulge. So I replaced it back by adding 2 inches. So this is me cutting out the pattern on the lining. So this is the lower part. I also added 1.5 inches on the sides and 1/2 inch on the lower side. So I'll also cut it out. Then I'm going to notch the side, the darts, I beg your pardon. So our panel is ready, but before then I'm going to draft it on the Ankara fabric. So guys, I've done that. I've cut it on the Ankara fabric. Exactly how I cut the lining is how I cut the Ankara fabric. So I've gone ahead to add interfacing to it. I added paper gum on the lining. So I added hairstay on the Ankara fabric. So this is it. So this is the center front. So I cut out 4 pieces on the center front. I came down by 1 inch from the chest line and I cut out 4 pieces and I padded it on the center front to have this shape. Then on the side I did the same thing. I cut out 4 pieces. So what I did was, this is the hairstay. So I placed the side panel on it and I traced it out this way to cut it out. So I cut out 4 and I placed it on this part. Then I gave it a good press to secure it, to help us pad it. If you don't have wadding, you can do this style. So I did the same thing on the lining. So we've gone ahead to add interfacing to all our panels. So the next thing I'm going to do is to join them. So on the darts, I'm going to sew here by 1/2 inch all the way to the lower point. So this is me pinning it up, securing it with a pin. So I'll go ahead and sew it and show you. So guys, I've done that. I've sewn it by 1/2 inch. So as you can see, the cup side is already having shape. So what I also did was I notched this point. I made tiny notches all the way to the end. Then I gave it a good press and I have this. So I did the same thing on the lining. I also notched it and we have this also. Then on the back panel, I stitched the dart. So this is the dart on the lining. So I sewed this part by 1/2 inch. Let me turn it to the wrong side. So this is what I did. And after that, I did a loose stitch on the center back for our zipper allowance. I'll be losing it later. So this is the main fabric. I repeated the same thing. I stitched the dart. After doing that, I also did a loose stitch on the center back. Here we have the lower part of the front panel. I've also gone ahead to sew the dart here. So remember our pattern paper, this is the dart. So this is where I stitched by 1/2 inch. So I repeated the same thing on the back panel. So this is the back panel and this is the center back. So I also did 1/2 inch for the dart. So I'm going to keep it aside. So this is the yoke. So I'm going to place the lining on the main fabric, that is good side to good side, and I'm going to be sewing this point by 1/4 inch all the way. Then I'll take it to the other side. Then after doing that, on the lower side I'll repeat the same. So I'm going to sew it all the way by 1/4 inch to the other end. I decided to separate it so that I can easily turn it out to the other side here. So it was difficult to turn it out. So this is where I stitched, then I pulled it out to the good side. Remember, the main pattern paper was one panel, so I had to separate it. So we have this. Now I'm going to be placing it on the other bodies. So I'll place it this way, good side to good side. So I'm going to overlap them together like so. So I'm going to top stitch this point here. I'll top stitch it. So I've secured it with a pin. So I'll top stitch it and show you. So guys, I've done that. I've top stitched it, as you can see. So this is the part I stitched. So I'll be cutting out this excess here. I'll be cutting it out. So now I'll place the front lining to the dress. So this is the lining. I'll place it this way. So I'll turn it over like so, good side to good side, and I'll make sure the center point aligns here. So I'll secure it with a pin. Then I'll be sewing it by 1/4 inch all the way to the other end. So I'll do that and show you. So I've done that. So I've secured the lining to the main fabric. and we have this is our style on the neckline. Then this is the lower part, so I'll also be joining it, making sure the two darts are aligning. That's the dart on the top part, it aligns with the dart on the lower part. So I'll be sewing it by 1/2 inch. Then I'll do the same thing on the lining. I forgot to mention I'm sewing lining to lining and fabric to fabric, so I'll join the lining separately and the main fabric separately. So on the back panel I'll do the same thing. I'm going to join the lower part together, that is the lower part to the top part, by 1/2 inch, lining to lining and fabric to fabric. So this is me repeating what I'm going to do on the main fabric. So I'll sew them and show you. So we've done that. This is the top part, I've joined it to the lower part. So as you can see, I joined lining separately from the main fabric. So this is the back panel. I did the same thing. I joined the fabric to fabric and lining to lining. Now the next thing I'm going to do, this is the back panel. So I'll be joining the shoulder. Then I'm going to place the front panel on the back panel on the shoulder like this. I'll make sure the neckline tallies. Then I'll place the back panel, that's the back lining, together, and I'll be sewing it by 1/2 inch. So I'll secure it with a pin. So we'll have something like this. So I'll repeat the same thing on the other panel. So this is the back panel and this is the front. I'll make sure the neckline tallies. Then I'll place the back lining on it like so on the shoulder. So I'll be sewing it by 1/2 inch. So I'll just do that and show you. So guys, I've done that. As you can see, I've attached the shoulder together. So this is where I stitched it by 1/2 inch. Then I decided to sew a little on the neckline and I stopped at this point where the zipper will be. So I just stitched here and I came out a little more here on the neckline. Then we have this. So this is the shoulder and this is the neckline. So this is where the zipper will be here. I left that part about 2 inches. So this is the neckline. So after fixing our shoulder, the next thing we're going to do is to join the front and back together like so. So before I join them together, I'll take the circumference. So the bust is 38 divided by 2 will give us 19 inches. So when I mark 19 inches here, I have excess of 3 inches. So I'll divide 3 inches into 2 and place it on both sides. Then on the underbust is 31 divided by 2 will give us 15.5. When I mark 15.5 here, I have excess of 4 inches. So I'll divide the 4 inches into 2 and I'll have 2 inches on both sides. And on the waist is 32 divided by 2 will give us 16 inches. So I have excess of 3 inches. I'll mark 1.5 inches on both sides. And on the hip is 42 inches. 42 divided by 2 will give us 21 inches. So I have excess of 3 inches here. So I'll divide it into 2 and place it on both sides. So I'll place good side to good side and I'll be sewing fabric to fabric and lining to lining. I'm not sewing them together. So I'll make sure the waistline is aligning. Then I'll be sewing the measurement I took on each side. Then I'll turn it over and I'll sew the lining also. So this is the lining. I'll repeat the same thing and sew the measurement I took. So after doing that, I'll come back and show you. So guys, I've done that. I've joined the side seam. As you can see, this is the dress. I'll turn it to the other side. So this is the zipper allowance. So I'll be attaching the zipper to the dress. I'll be attaching it only on the main fabric, not the lining. So I'll just make sure I stop somewhere here when I fix it. So I'll be sewing it and without the lining and I'll show you. So I've done that. I've fixed the zipper to the dress. So we have this. So let me open it up and show you. So like I said, I did not sew it with the lining. I only stitched it on the main fabric. So this is the zipper on the main fabric. So I'll turn it over good side to good side. That is lining to the fabric on the good side. So I'm going to place it together like this on the zipper allowance. So I'll be sewing the neckline here, then afterward I'll sew close to the stitch all the way to the end. So I'll do that and show you. So guys, I've attached the lining to the zipper. So as you can see, we're having a really nice finishing. So the length of my dress is 50 inches. So I have about 27 inches here. So I'll be adding extra 27 inches. That is plus seam allowance. That's about 2 inches for seam allowance. So I'll be cutting the lower part. So I'll take the round measurement of the hemline. So I have about 47 inches on the hemline. So I'll be cutting this chiffon fabric times 4. That is 47 times 4. So I'll cut it out and show you. So I've done that. So I made it times 4 longer. That is 47 times 4. Then I hemmed the lower part. So I made the length 27 inches. That is the length of the chiffon. I made it 27 inches. So I did a loose stitch on the other side. That's the top side. I did a loose stitch. So I'm going to be pulling it out too, so that we can have our gathers. So I hope you know how to make your gathers. So you just make a very loose stitch and you pick one of the threads and pull it out until you have a full gather like so. So after gathering it, I'm going to measure it so that I will make sure I have about 47 inches. So I'm trying to check it. I have about 48 inches, which is okay. So I'll be using the remaining 1 inch for seam allowance. That's to join it on the 2 sides. So I'll just go ahead and top stitch on it and show you. So I've done that. I've top stitched on the gather so that it will stay firm, so that it doesn't keep moving. So I've joined the side seam together, so we have like a skirt. I joined it by ½ inch. So this is what we have. So now I'll be attaching it to the dress. So I'll turn it over like so. I'll tuck it in. I'm going to sew only on the fabric. That is the chiffon. I'm sewing it on the main fabric, not on the lining. So I'll make sure I place it properly. Then I'll be sewing it all the way around. And I'll do that and show you. Like I said, I'm not sewing the lining. So I've done that. So as you can see, this is the gather. This is the effect it gave us on the dress. So we have this. This is the back panel. So I'm going to be sewing the lining. So I cut out another piece of lining. It's like ×2 of the circumference. Remember, the circumference is 47, so I timesed it by 2. So I also stitched the hemline, and the length I have is around 22 inches. So it's shorter than the main fabric. So I'll be attaching it from the zipper allowance, and I'm going to be making some tiny plates to fit the circumference on the lining. So it's not going to be as full as the chiffon because the lining is thick already. So I've done that. I've attached it to the top part of the lining. So as you can see, it's already looking very beautiful and very neat. So this is what we have. So the next thing I'm going to do is to sew the sleeve. So to do that is a cycle sleeve with elastic. So I'll get the round of this circumference of the armhole. Then I'm going to fold my, so the Ankara is not so much. I will advise you, when you are making your own, you can use about 3 yards of Ankara. So I have very limited Ankara. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make use of what I have. So I'm going to fold it into 2, then I'll refold it on bias, and I have this. So the length I have here is around 19 inches. So what I'm going to do, I'll just create like an S shape like this, just a random shape. Then I'm going to measure the round. I will measure it. The round I'm working with is 18 inches. So I have around 10 inches. That's divided by 2 will give me 20 inches, which is okay for me. So I'll just curve it out and cut it out. So I cut out 2. So we have this. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'll be joining the sides. So I'll be joining the sides by 1 inch. So I'll sew it by 1 inch. After I do that, then I'm going to attach the elastic to it. So this is the elastic I'll be using. So the round is 10 inches. So I'm going to cut it out. So I'm cutting the exact 10 inches because I don't want it to be too tight. So I'll sew it on this point here. I'll top stitch on it here, then I'll show you. So guys, I've joined the side, then I folded it once by 1/2 inch. So this is the elastic. I've top stitched this part. So what I'll do, I'm going to place it on the hem line here, like so. I'll fold it together here. I'll start sewing it by 1 inch. Then I'll be stretching the elastic while sewing it. So I'll sew it and stretch the elastic, sew the other side until I get to the end of the circumference. So I fixed the elastic on this sleeve, or one of the sleeves. So this is what I achieved. So this is our sleeve. Now before fixing the sleeve to the armhole, I'll go ahead and top stitch the lining and the fabric together so that it will be firm. Then I'm going to tuck it in. That is the sleeve. I'll tuck it in, making sure the side seam aligns. Then I'll secure it to the pin, tuck it in this way. Then I'm going to sew it round. So the excess, I'm going to pleat the excess on the shoulder because it has some excess. So on the yoke, this part that is open here, I decided to top stitch it on this side, on the armhole here. That's on the side seam, so that it doesn't look funny when I'm attaching the sleeve. So I top stitch it on that side before fixing the sleeve. So guys, I've fixed the sleeve to the dress. So the sleeve is supposed to be a bit longer than this because I have limited fabric. So I had to use what I have to achieve this. So this is the armhole. I'll be weaving it in the sewing machine. So guys, having done all this, I'll go ahead and give it a good press. We've come to the end of these tutorials. I hope it was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Thanks for watching.